I'd like to begin by asking you a question you've probably been asked many times before, but I don't mind if you give me the same answer you've given before. And that is, you are a pianist who has attained an international career, and you were also a pianist who's won at least one major competition. If you were to imagine never having won that competition, what would be different?
Well, you are starting sort of from the middle.
Okay.
It's the market sort of needs these competitions today. People need some valuation. Actually, people don't need it that much, but we tend to put things into some order. We need some order, and the society today wants to know who is the best, who is the second, as it would be possible to say in art. And I'm happy to see in the last few years that careers are coming out not through competitions, which is a very good thing, because competition is always, the only good thing about the competition is that it mobilizes you to work, that you get a particular date, that you start to play concerts and so on, just to get into shape and to play for a particular occasion. But that's about all. The other part of the competition is that it's impossible to judge people. It's impossible to put them between 1 and 10. And then, of course, the market only absorbs, in the best case, the number 1. Number 2 usually doesn't get any concerts. Sometimes the differences are so small.
And sometimes the number 1 does not, in fact, launch a career, and number 4 might.
This is actually unusual, but it also happens. Yeah.
So, if I understand you correctly, you're saying, even though it's difficult to order musicians from 1 to 10, usually the numbers 1 and 2 slots are occupied by musicians that are pretty good bets to have careers in any event, and that the competition helps that along a little bit by...
Yes, the good thing in it is that they get some exposure, and like in the Warsaw competition in which I took part, the last one, is you get all the people there in the end of the competition. I mean, all the managers, all the orchestra managers, agencies, and so on and so on. And they see the guy, they say, okay, this is something we want to have. And sometimes they don't even care for this, if he got the first prize, or if he is just good and made a good impression on them. So altogether, I refused always to be in competitions as a jury member. From the other hand, I'm not against competitions, because this is not constructive. The constructive way would be to produce something which balances the vacuum which the competition would leave after we destroy them. And that would be much more constructive, to create some alternatives. And somehow nobody came up with any alternative, but everybody's mocking about the competition, which is unfair. Me included.
Did you yourself find, along with the many positives that winning Warsaw in '75 brought you, did you find any sort of negatives that were bothersome at the time, like being pigeonholed as a Chopin specialist? And
well, you receive
like
a package of the competition. A package is like the sales of socks in a department store, where you get some of the brown ones which you need, and then some of the pink ones which you just throw out. But it's in this package there are, of course, a lot of things which disturb you to follow your thoughts, to follow your ideas in life. Like, for me, it was very difficult to cope in the beginning with a career. I didn't want it to make such a big career, actually. At that point, I wasn't ready for it. So the most important thing for me at that time was to find myself again, to find my rhythm of working, yet at the same time take advantage of that what the competition gave. What I mean to say is take advantage of contacts with conductors I got, orchestras, engagements, and so on and so on. Having an opportunity to play recital in Carnegie Hall, playing with Berlin Philharmonic and Herbert von Karajan, recording with Bernstein, and so on. This, of course, had to be used. I couldn't say no to this, because that's the purpose why I'm working, why I'm practicing. But all the other parts, this so-called carriera, where you go into the tram and all the people look at you and know who you are, that doesn't make any sense in this profession.
You know, it could be argued that you are the last winner of a major competition who really has gotten to the top of the profession. I can't think of anyone since 1975 who has really
Well,
gotten to the top of the
you're
profession.
right in a sense that indeed the late 70s was sort of a deadline, was sort of a break point for competitions. That's true that after 1976, 1977, even the first prize didn't get the chance to go on with to start a career, or people didn't use the chance in a proper way. But indeed, a lot of competitions were between this date and today, and actually very few of the people used it really for the purpose of developing musically and play concerts. Because I don't think career is that what is the most important from that what I got from the competition. The most important was actually that I had the chance to work with wonderful people afterwards, and respectively adopt a lot of things from them. It's like studying, in Juilliard school for 5 years when you play the concert with Giulini. So it's that what was offered to me together in a package with this competition, that I had this chance afterwards to work with these wonderful people, to learn from them, to meet them, to absorb the things they achieved in their whole life.
Has your repertoire over the years shifted? You seem to have an interest much more in contemporary music than you did when you first started. Maybe that's not true. Maybe it's only coming out now. But now
no, it's not true. Actually, it was always one basic idea which didn't change at all, which is to keep as wide as possible the picture of the repertoire you are using. But respectively, since I don't play so often in the places, when I come 1 year I play French music, when I come next year I play romantic music and so on, and of course then it induces that one is changing, or one is changing moods, or one is changing things one likes, which actually is coincidental, because you can always play only 90 minutes in a concert, and then you play this repertoire which you just work on now. But for example, already in 2 days in Boston I'm playing a different program, and in Japan I'm still playing a different program. So it's in a way next month.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way it depends from that. When we meet, then you will have a completely different picture of the person.
What do you consider your responsibility to be, if you feel you have one, as far as presenting music by living composers to a wide audience? I know you did the Lutosławski. Can share it us.
Tremendous responsibility. We are the only ones who can, because they, make them alive. If they produce a score and the score is lying somewhere in a library, this is also a very nice thing, but the moment people don't hear it, the purpose of writing the score is not fulfilled. So actually a score has to be played, the music has to be played today, and we have to sort of give it to the audience, the reflection of our time, what is happening in our music. And it's not a trouble of today, it probably was always like this, that always the music was that what was today was always difficult to judge to the people. I have the same reflections from the beginning of the 19th century, where Schumann starts some of his ideas and is absolutely not understood. Brahms and other people, not to mention 1911 with Pietruszka and Sacre, and imagine this piece, which is today one of the greatest pieces ever written, not only of the 20th century, was just booed out in the first performance. So it's, in a way, people always had difficulty in just getting so quickly adopted to that what is happening. But that's exactly the reason why we have to do it, to widen these horizons, and to make the people widen their ideas about music, about art, about the new aesthetics coming, which are a reflection of our time.
How do you find contemporary music? It's not so easy necessarily as walking into a music store. And do composers approach you in
At
many
first, I
instances?
would have great difficulty in telling what contemporary music is. This expression doesn't tell me anything.
I mean music by living composers. I mean, that's one definition. That's the definition I've been using for this interview.
we tend, again, to put these things into order, to say, okay, this is classic, this is romantic, this is contemporary, this is dodecaphonistic, and so on. In reality, it doesn't really exist like this.
Right.
Only time is selecting it later, or people who have to put it into some order, they try to create these artificial borders between styles and so on.
Yeah, I wasn't speaking stylistically. I was speaking about a composer who is alive writing piano music.
Who do you
I'll give
think
you
is a composer?
Ligeti, Michael Finney.
Chick Corea,
Yeah.
Keith
sure.
Jarrett.
Sure.
Okay, so we are talking about such a wide picture.
Wide picture.
That-
But how do you find? Are you approached by composers who come to you with piano works and say,
Yes, of course.
I dedicate this
Of
to you, and you sort through those?
And I think feelings are the only actually judgments I can make. Because from looking from a score and from seeing how well it's composed, it still not tells me how well the audience will receive this, how much actually emotions are contained in this piece, how much of the purpose why music was created, the idea of why the human being suddenly created art, is contained.
Do you find composers if they solicit you or they want you to play a piece of theirs, will they consult with you? For example, did Lutoslawski consult with you as far as the writing of the piano concerto?
No, he didn't.
Mhm.
And I even wouldn't like to, because it's, people of this caliber, they know exactly what they're writing. They know exactly what they want from the piece. And they shouldn't adjust it to one person playing it. They don't write it for one person. They write it, for the entire world.
And yet Brahms, when he wrote the violin concerto, consulted with Joachim.
Well, probably because of practical reasons, from the technical point of view. Lutoslawski didn't have to. He's a fantastic pianist himself.
Mhm.
So, but probably if he is composing a bassoon concerto, he's probably consulting it with a guy who knows how to blow this instrument. So it's unless he doesn't do it himself, and so this is perfectly normal. But it's not because he wants to tailor the piece to someone, but he simply needs some informations what the craftsmanship concerns of the person, how to use as much, as little effort to be able to produce as much music as possible.
Tell me about your explorations with Szymanowski, which was a very pleasant surprise last year when you played the Masks.
Why last year? I always played in every recital in New York. I put a piece of a contemporary Polish composer or a composer like Szymanowski. I played Szymanowski in Carnegie Hall in 1982 for the first time for mazurkas. I played Szymanowski in 1985 in Abel Fischer Hall, the Variation Cycle, Opus 10.
Oh, that's correct, yes, you're right.
And the Masks now, Opus 33, whatever, 34. So it's not a new thought, just people now began to discover this, but it was actually always there.
Are you thinking, as far as Szymanowski is concerned, would you entertain performing the second sonata?
I don't think the sonatas are his best pieces, to be honest. And to sell this composer, to put it in this brutal way, I think we ought to put at first the pieces which are really of the first caliber, not to scare the people away from him.
But I take that implicit in what you say is also that the pieces themselves don't speak to you, those sonatas, either as the performer, as effectively as some of his other pieces.
Maybe there will be one day where I will be able to find myself in this piece and I will say, okay, I'm playing it. But for a moment I thought of giving the audience one of these cycles where I know they will like it because it's good music. And I know that I can do something of it what they can consider that not at wasted time to listen to it.
How much do you consider the audience when you're programming? Somebody had said to me a couple of weeks ago when they saw your program for the Carnegie concert with Friday that they said, "Oh, Debussy and Schubert. This isn't the kind
Doesn't
of
make
program
any
I want
sense,
to." Well, actually, they more said that this was not the kind of program they'd want to hear, as if it were, as if it wasn't interesting enough or exciting enough or too much music. For
I have to tell you one
average
thing.
ear.
I could say today I'm in this lucky situation to have a kind of first hint here in this country also of my own audience. In Europe it works already for a few years, so that I know Amsterdam, I come, the hall is sold out, and I know the faces, I know everybody there. But I started with 300 people in Amsterdam. For my next recital I had 600 people. For the next concert I was I had half a concert hall. And by this consequent, method of giving good pieces to the people, not necessarily programs they would know how to whistle the first theme, but pieces where when they went out of the concert, they said, okay, I was happy to hear it. And with this policy, actually I managed after 10 years to have for the first time sold out houses, and these people come back. And for these people it doesn't really matter what you play or if they know it or not. They trust. And it's very important for me not to betray them.
But now you're talking about a situation where it's a hall you've played and you've developed a following, you've developed a public in that particular city. What do you do when you go to a new city? Or a new country for that matter?
Luxury is not something which comes at some point. You can create it. You can just say at any point. So often people say to me, well, you can now afford it, but I'm not in a situation. The thing is, I could always afford it. I didn't care to lose money in these concerts. I thought this is the important way I want to go. This is the way I want to have my career. And that was the only important thing was at this point. And that was enough of a reason to afford it. Even if I would have 300 people in the hall, I was losing money in the concerts. But sometimes you wait until the end of your life until you can afford it, and it never happens. And very often this affording it is at any time given, it just requires some little compromises. So I wouldn't make a difference whether I go to a new concert hall or an audience which absolutely doesn't know me. I have to be myself. I have to follow these ideas I have, which I'm convinced about them. I'm convinced that I can, fulfill myself in this kind of function and way of functioning, and then hope that the people will like it.
But now you bring up a question.
Mm-hmm.
Why, if that's the case, are you playing a different program in Boston on Sunday?
There were some practical reasons. At first, if I have to play on a tour 6 concerts, I will not play one program, because this is too much. It has to be fresh.
You're very unusual in that regard.
No, I don't think so.
I think you are, actually.
And the second thing is, there were some practical reasons why, for example, Cleveland couldn't make one of the pieces, and I think Toronto couldn't make one of the pieces. And then since I had to give 2 programs anyway, I said, well, why should I play this program in the beginning and the other one in the end? Let's change in every concert. So it means every second concert I'm playing the same program in these 6 recitals. And I feel much more fresh, and I feel much more creating it just at that moment.
Do you have a time frame when you're learning a new piece before you feel you can present it to the public?
Not really. It works this way that I'm working at the same time on a relatively huge repertoire, and the pieces are on various stages. Some of them I'm on a stage of reading and just making up my mind whether I'll ever play it. The other pieces are sort of already halfway, where I invested already 5 years into learning it, where I know the notes, where I just know what I want to say in this piece, but I have to learn the notes. The other pieces are more or less ready. I just need some final polish of the structure and so on and so on. The other pieces I worked on, and I know after 10 years now I have the piece and I'll never play it because I just grew out of it. And so, this is about the way of working. So at some point I decide, okay, now I have a bunch of pieces which are ready, and I try to make a program out of it. I try to find a philosophy, what I want to do with this program, maybe to add some other pieces to it, or to accelerate, some other processes of learning in order to fit into this picture. And then I'm trying always to, as I said, to be in a as wide as possible repertoire, not to neglect pieces from Bach to the contemporary music, although there's never enough time to do all, and you have to cut at some point, somewhere.
How many concerts a year do you currently play, in total, solo and orchestral, roughly?
If I plan a season, I don't say, okay, in this season I will want to play 50 concerts.
Right. But is that the ballpark figure?
This is about a
Plus or
figure
minus
which
30?
is comfortable.
Yeah.
Why am I not saying this? Because it's it depends from the way you plan the tours. You know, if you come to New York and you play 4 evenings with the New York Philharmonic, it's not the same kind of effort than to play 4 different recitals, one in Stockholm, the other in Taipei, and the third in Tokyo. So the amount of power you lose on this is much bigger than to sit in one hotel and play a piece of 20 minutes like a Liszt concerto. So you cannot really say that this amount of concerts is the good one, because it varies really from season to season. The lowest season I ever had was 25 concerts. The highest I ever played was 69,
Okay.
which was killing me. That was really too much.
69
Yeah.
was really
Yeah.
That is
pushing
a
it.
lot.
Yeah.
Do you?
But I know people who play 120 concerts.
Yeah,
I know
that's
even a
what I was curious,
person who
yeah.
plays 200 concerts.
200. Well. Okay.
And you know, it's not really a rule, because I wouldn't say it's bad. For this person, it works.
Yeah. Oh, I think it has to work for you if you're going to do 200 concerts.
Yeah, it works for this person. The person needs to play so much in order to stay in shape. And you know, the whole structure of organizing, it's not quite easy. If you play less concerts, and then you have 4 days between the concerts, do you think anybody wants to know you at Carnegie Hall? I mean, they have their other engagements. They cannot give you rehearsing time because they are just fully booked.
I spoke to a
So the reality is that when you have days off, you just sit around, you get nervous because you don't have a place to practice. And for some people who have to sit on the piano every day and practice, this is of course a disaster.
You find you don't have to, I presume. You can
I
go away
have
from
to,
the piano,
but not
or-
to sit on a piano.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm working every day,
But you're thinking.
but I do a lot of work in just in my head.
On the traveling, you mentioned the greater expense of energy if you were traveling to
Yeah.
4 cities. I spoke to a pianist, I won't say who it was in particular, who what he does is he will go to a city on the day of a concert.
Mhm.
He will take either a sleeping pill if he needed to the night
Mm.
before,
Yeah.
or a pep pill, or whatever, and he is able to actually go on stage and
Mhm.
just play the concert, and then go and travel to another city. What's comfortable for you as far as preparation in a
Well, I always come a day before the concert.
at least one day?
At least one day. To America, I come 3 days before the concert, just because of the jet lag.
Right.
And I never plan concerts actually one day after another, even if they're in the same place.
Do you have
Because-
time? I'm sorry.
Yeah?
Do you have time to teach? Do you have an inclination to teach, or is traveling too?
There are two different questions.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm very curious at teaching. I always have the feeling that I learn more than the students actually. But it's very interesting to confront things, to see how people see it from their body. You know, I was always curious, if you really looking at this table see that it's also red,
Mhm.
or you see a green table and you just call it red.
Mhm.
So it's the way we have all this kind of conventions we are used to. And the moment I work with the students, it's very interesting to have to verbalize things, to put into words things which you very often do automatically. And so I'm sometimes confronted with a question, literally, how do you walk? Of course, in musical terms. And then explain to someone, how do you walk? You put your left leg and then your right leg and you
Mhm.
shift the balance. And it's really interesting to explain it, because it's something you never think about, something you learned when you were 1 year old, and now you have to verbalize it. And this, of course, happens so often in these courses that people ask me something which I was working on 20 years ago. For a long time, I already forgot that such a problem exists, or I solved this problem completely subconsciously. And here, suddenly, I have to verbalize it. I have to say what the thing is about, why do I do it this way, and how to get out of it. So it is incredibly interesting, and you know, the problems are never related to pushing just the right key at the right moment. They are much deeper than that. They rely in the fields of philosophy, of that's why you are on stage. Why do you do this? Very often technical problems are problems which sit somewhere very deep in your mind, have nothing to do with the muscles. And you just have to find this place where something is wrong, or increase the tension of the performance. And I see it in my case very often, and when I have a technical problem, the worst what I can do is just to sit down and to try to work on the technique.
Glenn Gould said that too. That
You just have to know
tension-
exactly what you
Yeah.
want to do musically with this piece. The moment you know that, actually the technical problem is solved by themselves.
Am I correct then in assuming that you do not routinely play abstract exercises, Dohnányi or Tausig, or
I find it complete
For that
nonsense,
reason.
Yeah, I never played scales. I
never
played
did,
any- never
even
in
when
my
you
life.
were much younger?
No.
Except at the very beginning, I imagine you were asked
Well,
to.
even not that. Even not that. I was very bad at playing scales and all this stuff, and it's completely useless because you never use them in any piece. You have hardly any pieces where you have a scale longer than 5 notes.
What about things that are typically though,
You know, the only
like
technical
scales
problem.
of 6, 6 or double things that would seem
Yeah.
to benefit from?
I don't see any benefit
Okay.
from this. You solve on a very complicated way a problem which is actually quite easy. It's a problem of transmission, of transmitting the thoughts from your brain straight to your fingers. And you can learn it also in the way of playing scales and playing all the possible patterns which later show up in the piece. That is also a method. But I don't know if that's the quickest method to do it. That's the easiest method to do it.
On another,
Alexis Weissenberg actually used to say that he would also never practice exercises or anything like that, that he would learn his technique from passages in the music.
this must be like the red table and the green table, because you had pianists like Rachmaninoff who felt that they absolutely had to. They had their routine every morning. They had to do a certain amount, and some of it was in fact scales. Some of it was pieces like a Chopin.
This is quite a strong point. I mean, with a person who plays so well piano like Rachmaninoff, it really makes me scared. Maybe I do something wrong.
No,
I
I
don't
guess
think
he
so.
just I guess he just needed to he needed to start his day that way. I guess is another way to look at it.
He also started late. I mean, he had a little bit of a
Early and late,
disadvantage
right.
because he decided to become a pianist at the age of 45 after being a
But still, it's
composer.
interesting to hear that your approach. On another subject, did you ever compose or improvise improvise? Do you find it easy
I
to do?
started actually playing piano from composing.
Oh.
So it was only later I discovered that there were some other guys who did it much better, and I sort of decided not to make a fool of myself anymore. But improvise, yes and no, except this improvisation when you get lost in a piece in a concert. But it needs a certain amount of talent to be able to free yourself from these patterns you're used to do at pieces, and however, it is a wonderful way of expressing yourself, especially jazz improvisation and this kind of, classic music improvisation sounds a little bit ridiculous for me. I don't know. It's to sit down and improvise a Mozart sonata, for
a little
example, in Mozart's
dated.
time. It's kind of outdated. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank you very
much.
much.
Thank you.